Yesterday, President Obama proposed a $263 million investment package to increase use of body-worn cameras, expand training for law enforcement agencies, and add resources for police department reform. Joining me to talk about community-oriented policing in San Diego is my guest, Detective Sergeant Ben Kelso, president of the San Diego Black Police Officers Association. And Ben, welcome back.
Thank you, Peggy.
Now, we keep hearing this community policing. What is community policing?
You know, in a generalized concept, community policing is nothing more than collaborative efforts between law enforcement and community stakeholders on defining what the objectives are for law enforcement and working together to try to solve those problems. And
specifically in certain neighborhoods, right? Diverse neighborhoods.
Correct.
I see. What's your overall take on relations between minority communities and the San Diego Police Department? You
know, depending on the national outlook, those relationships can be strained at times, and at other times they're better. Right now, based on the year-long efforts we've seen to try to improve the relationship, the police department has put out body-worn cameras and done some other things to try to improve, but it's still a work in progress.
Before we get to the cameras, how do you think federal oversight could assist with community policing, this federal oversight that the president's proposing? You
know, I believe it's got promise. It's got, especially given that there will be funding put to those programs to kind of help those things out. There was a time when San Diego was a national model of community-based policing, and I think budget cuts and other funding issues have hampered those efforts.
Well, I know the San Diego Police Department has plans to equip all its officers, I believe, with body cameras by the end of next year. What role do you think that will play in addressing the issues of trust between police and maybe these neighborhoods that it hasn't traditionally been so?
Well, I believe that the cameras will help in some ways, but then in other ways, maybe not so much. It's still kind of up in the air on what the effect of it will be, because we don't know how people are going to interpret what they see on those videos.
So in interpretation, are there rules and policies in place already as far as for the San Diego Police Department on when these cameras, will they go on automatically, when they roll, things like that?
There are some intro procedures in place that the chief has addressed. It's still a study and a pilot program. The officers will still have to manually operate those cameras, and the details are being worked out on what happens when that doesn't take place.
What are the officers that you're speaking with, and what have they told you as far as, are they in favor of wearing body cameras?
Most officers that we're talking to are pleased with the cameras so far and like the efforts to use them.
You mentioned just a few minutes ago that San Diego used to be a model in terms of community-oriented policing, and that changed. What happened? You
know, I think budget cuts, the economic downturn nationwide affected how law enforcement agencies across the nation did their work, and in San Diego, especially because we had to figure out what were going to be our best efforts and what we had to apply them to, and that was answering radio calls.
So back in the day when it was the model, what was that like?
Well, that was some good times. We definitely built some strong relationships. San Diego was a winner of the Goldstein Award for community-based policing. There were teams out that were working with community leaders to solve projects. Operation Weed and Seed was one of them, and there were countless many others that worked really well. But when funding dried up for those things, we had to figure out what our basic function was, and that's responding to emergencies.
What do you think it'll take to bring that sort of model community policing back to San Diego? Well,
probably a lot of things. Funding would be one of them. I think definitely reaching out and doing better recruiting efforts to bring in more officers. We're losing officers at a high rate, and that affects how we enforce the laws and what types of things that we work on out there. If we can grow our department back, maybe we'll be able to do more to those efforts.
Do you think the San Diego will see any of the federal funding that the president has been talking about?
You know, I'm unaware of whether or not we will right. specifically see, so we'd certainly like to.
It might be hoping for it. What do you want to say to people as far as now what the community members can do to build up relationships and to work with the police, especially in this time following Ferguson where there's just protest and anxieties are very high?
I think if the community leaders, and some of them are coming forward and working together in coalition with the police department to try to solve some of these issues and open up lines of dialogue, things will get a lot better.
All right, Detective Sergeant Ben Kelso, thank you so much.
Thank you.